Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're digging into something pretty intense.
We are. We've got this mix of academic research, like quantitative models, and then some really raw, real-world advice.
Yeah, all focused on what it's like being a college student in Manila. We're talking rent, food, stress, the whole grind.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And our goal, is to try and connect the dots. How do those daily choices, where you live, what you can afford to eat, link up to the bigger picture?
Like academic success, resilience, how you survive it all within the Philippine education system's challenges.
That's the plan. Synthesizing the hard data with, well, the street smarts needed to get by.
Okay, so let's start with the basics. A roof over your head, accommodation. This seems crucial for anyone involved in planning or property in Manila, right?
Absolutely. Understanding student needs is key for businesses, architects, everyone. The sources use something called conjoint analysis to get at this.
Conjoint analysis. Can you break that down a bit? What does it actually do?
Sure. It's basically a method to figure out trade-offs. It presents choices, different combinations of features, and forces you to decide what matters most. Like, would you take a smaller room for a better location?
Well,
Or pay more for better facilities?
got it. So it reveals the hierarchy. What came out on top for Manila students?
Well, no huge surprise here. Price. It was the absolute #1 factor.
Okay, price first. What followed?
Then came facilities,
Yeah.
the quality of the amenities. After that, the actual type of housing, like a condo versus an apartment.
And last.
Location was ranked least important, interestingly enough.
So it really boils down to money first and foremost. Financial triage, like you said.
Pretty much. And the studies pinpointed a specific figure, too. Students seem willing, or maybe able, to pay around 7,000 pesos a month.
PHP 7,000 monthly. That's a sort of benchmark.
That seems to be the psychological threshold, yeah.
But here's where it gets a bit confusing, maybe. If price is everything, why did the data also show students prefer condominiums? And even more, they prefer individual rooms, not sharing.
Ah, yes. That's the contradiction, isn't it?
Because condos and private rooms, they're generally more expensive. So how does that square with price being the top priority?
It highlights a real conflict. That 7,000 peso target is driven by financial reality. But, well, students seem willing to stretch that or maybe compromise on location or something else for perceived safety, privacy, perhaps even status.
So they're trading costs for security, personal space.
Exactly. And remember, a large chunk of the students surveyed, something like 70%, were still living at home. So choosing to move out is a big step.
And they want their own space, maybe a quiet place to study, which you don't always get sharing.
Precisely.
Yeah.
It's about dignity, focus. Maybe worth bending the budget for, even if it means moving further out.
That desire for privacy, even under financial pressure, says a lot. Okay, let's shift gears from housing to food, because this sounds like where things move from pressure to, well, potential crisis. What's the bigger picture on food insecurity in the Philippines?
It's sobering. Really sobering. As of 2020, nearly 55 million Filipinos were considered chronically food insecure.
55 million.
Yeah. And the country's ranking on the Global Food Security Index isn't great either. 67th out of 113 in 2022. This isn't just skipping lunch sometimes.
No, it's systemic. A lack of consistent access to enough, healthy food.
And for a student trying to learn, that's a direct hit to their potential.
So how did the research connect this national problem to individual students, specifically those in Manila's university belt? They use 10-MAP, right? Structural equation modeling.
That's right. SCM is a powerful statistical tool. It lets researchers test a whole web of relationships at once.
So not just A causes B, but how multiple things interact.
Exactly. In this case, they used it to see how different aspects of food insecurity, like how often it happens or how severe it is, directly impact academic stuff, grades, participation, focus in class. It helps map out those connections.
Okay, let's unpack those connections. They looked at FIP food insecurity prevalence and FIS food insecurity severity. What did FIP link to?
Right, so FIP, which measures that chronic, long-term lack of food access, that showed a significant negative correlation with the students' overall grades, their general weighted average, or GWA.
So basically, the longer you're dealing with food insecurity, the lower your overall academic standing tends to be. Makes sense, sadly.
It does. It's a cumulative drag on performance.
And what about the severity, FIS, the more immediate impact?
That's where it hits the classroom behavior. FIS correlated significantly with class participation and class attentiveness.
So if you're acutely hungry or worried about your next meal right now,
You're less likely to speak up, less likely to be mentally present. And it wasn't just the insecurity itself, the actual amount of the food budget and the totality, like the nutritional completeness of meals.
Those also linked directly to participation and attentiveness.
Yes, both show significant correlations. If your budget is too low or your meals aren't substantial, your engagement in class suffers.
This really reframes it for universities, doesn't it? It's not just a student welfare issue, it's fundamental to the academic mission.
Absolutely. If students can't focus because they're hungry or stressed about food, the whole educational enterprise is weakened. It becomes an academic intervention, not just charity.
Did the study offer advice for students caught in this?
It did. Things like making a strict daily meal budget, trying to focus on healthy options, prioritizing food over, non-essential spending. Sensible advice, but
But hard to follow when the pressure is immense and systemic.
exactly. Individual budgeting only goes so far.
Okay, so constant worries about rent, about food, that inevitably leads to stress. Let's talk about the internal landscape. What did the research find were the biggest stressors for students in state universities?
Well, the number one category was academic stressors. Things like intense competition between students, really heavy workloads, pressure from teachers' expectations. That was the main driver of distress.
Right, the academic grind itself. Where did money problems rank?
Financial stressors came in second. And they were statistically significant, make no mistake. It's a major concern.
But second to academic pressure.
Yes. And the researchers had an interesting thought on that. Because financial instability is so widespread, so normal, maybe, for many Filipinos.
Students might become almost desensitized to it or learn to live with it.
Perhaps. They might internalize the academic pressure as the thing that feels more immediate, the thing they have slightly more control over, even if the financial stress is constant.
That's a really interesting, maybe bleak adaptation, learning to function despite chronic financial worry.
It speaks volumes about the environment.
And this brings us to resilience, the ability to bounce back. How did Filipino adolescents measure up on that front?
Overall, resilience levels were found to be quite high. This is often linked to cultural values, things like pakikisama, that sense of community, and bahala na, that sort of hopeful outlook, maybe a bit fatalistic sometimes.
Okay, so generally resilient. Were there differences?
Yes, a very clear gender split emerged. Girls consistently showed a higher average resilience score of 3.82 compared to 3.13 for boys.
Higher across the board.
Pretty much across most factors, they measured family connection, school connection, self-esteem, empathy. Girls tended to score higher.
So girls seem, on average, better equipped psychologically and socially to handle challenges.
Based on these metrics, yes.
But here's the kicker. The paradox you mentioned earlier. Did this higher resilience actually lead to better academic outcomes, better grades?
And this is where it gets really fascinating and maybe concerning. The study found that while resilience factors in general did positively impact academic performance.
Okay, so resilience helps, generally speaking.
Yes, but there was no significant difference in the actual academic results, the GWA, between the students categorized as having high resilience versus those with low resilience.
Wait, let me make sure I heard that right. You could be highly resilient, really gritty, resourceful, and still end up with basically the same grades as someone who scores low on resilience.
That's what this particular study found. No statistically significant difference in GWA between the high and low resilience groups.
Wow, what does that even mean?
It strongly suggests there's a kind of systemic ceiling. The external pressures, poverty, the intense academic load, financial stress, maybe resource scarcity, they're so immense.
That individual grit just isn't enough to significantly move the needle on grades.
Exactly. It's like all that resilience gets used up just trying to stay afloat, just coping, rather than actually getting ahead academically compared to less resilient peers facing the same overwhelming system.
Individual strength gets canceled out by the system's weight. That's quite a thought.
It really is.
Okay, let's bring this down to earth. Ground it in the practical reality. We have these academic findings, but we also looked at survival tips from students actually living this. If you're new to Manila, moving there for college, what's the mindset you need?
The absolute number one piece of advice that came through was never let on that you're not from Manila.
Blend in, act like you belong.
Totally. Walk fast, walk with purpose, even if you're secretly lost. Know where you're going, or pretend to.
Avoid looking like a target.
Pretty much. Don't make eye contact with strangers trying to talk to you. It might seem rude, but it's safer than potentially falling for a scam. Confidence, or at least the appearance of it, is key.
What about just basic safety, staying physically safe?
Vigilance is crucial. Don't go home too late if you can help it. And the phone thing, never use your phone out in the open while commuting or walking in busy places.
Snatching risk.
Huge risk. Keep your bag in front of you, always. And here's a clever tip lots of students use. Have two wallets.
Two wallets.
Yeah, a spare change wallet with just enough cash for your jeepney fare or small buys. Keep that easily accessible. Your main wallet with more cash, your ID, ATM cards, keep that hidden securely.
So if you get held up, you hand over the decoy wallet and hopefully don't lose everything.
That's the idea. Practical ingenuity born from, well, necessity.
It really paints a picture of the daily risks.
It does. And beyond physical risks, there's the financial drain of the social scene, too. The University Belt area is packed with tempting places.
Famous eateries, coffee shops, milk tea places.
Exactly. Starbucks, all those spots. They can absolutely destroy a student's weekly allowance. Someone mentioned their 1,000 pesos could be gone by Wednesday if they weren't careful.
Just on snacks and drinks?
Yeah, succumbing to those temptations, instead of sticking rigidly to a meal plan. And peer pressure is real, too. Prioritizing going out drinking with friends. That was cited as a reason some students end up failing subjects or having to transfer.
So navigating the social pressures is as crucial as navigating the streets.
Definitely part of the survival game.
Okay, so we have these intense individual struggles, the rent, the food budget, the safety measures, the social minefield. But we need to remember this is all happening within a larger context, a national educational context that has its own serious challenges.
Right. We can't isolate the student experience from the broader picture of the Philippine education system. And that picture, based on recent data, is quite concerning.
What do the big statistics tell us?
Well, the World Bank finding from 2022 was pretty shocking. 9 out of 10 Filipino children couldn't read and understand a simple, age-appropriate text by age 10.
9 out of 10. That points to foundational learning issues.
Massive foundational issues. And then you look at the PISA results, the Program for International Student Assessment. In 2018, only about 1 in 5 Filipino students reached the minimum proficiency level in reading and math.
So many students are entering higher education already behind, fundamentally.
Yes, carrying those deficits with them. And these individual student struggles we've been discussing, stress, the difficulty focusing, they're layered on top of and worsened by these long-term structural problems.
Problems like?
Like persistent poverty, which affects everything. Malnutrition is a huge one. About 1 in 3 children under 5 experiences stunting. That has lifelong impacts on cognitive development.
And a gap between the skills needed today and what's being taught.
Exactly.
A gap between the need for 21st century skills, critical thinking, problem solving, creativity, and educational systems that might still rely heavily on rote learning. These deep structural issues create that ceiling we talked about.
So, summing this all up, it's been quite a journey. We started with that very concrete number, the VHP 7,000 rent threshold, and we saw how something as basic as your food budget directly connects to whether you can even pay attention in class. We've seen the stress, the resilience, the street smarts needed just to survive Manila.
And I think the key takeaway, the thing that really stands out, loops back to that resilience paradox.
Right, that finding that high resilience doesn't necessarily lead to better grades in this context.
Yeah, Filipino students clearly possess remarkable resilience, drawing on cultural strengths, family, community. But the data suggests that individual resilience, however strong, might be insufficient to truly overcome the weight of these massive systemic barriers. The poverty, the learning crisis itself. So resilience becomes necessary just for coping, for survival, but maybe not enough to actually excel academically in a way that sets you apart.
It seems that way. Individual effort hits a wall imposed by the system.
Which implies we can't just keep expecting students to adapt endlessly. There needs to be external support, structural change.
Which leads us to a final thought, something for you, the listener, to really consider. If highly resilient students are ending up with similar academic outcomes to low resilience students because the systemic challenges are just that overwhelming.
Then where should the focus be?
Exactly. How much responsibility for success can we realistically place on the individual student's shoulders, asking them to just be tougher, more resourceful? Or does the primary responsibility shift?
Shift towards fixing the system itself.
Towards investing heavily in those external supports, things like robust psychosocial services, meaningful economic relief for students and families, and fundamental reforms to the education system, addressing that learning crisis head on. How much of the burden is individual and how much must be systemic?